remember, like, going into the 90s? Like, there's some movies that I would recommend you leave in the past. The movies with cops. So you had one cop who was playing by the rules, ready for retirement. The other one who was rogue. Took the badge. Maverick. He's a maverick. He don't play by the rules. He's dangerous. He hangs on to 18-wheelers going, 90 miles per hour by the side and takes a fleet of army down, a whole fleet. Just talking about it, I get blurry. That's how bad it gets. No, there's no rules. Once you take the badge off, anything goes. It's full on, too, when the good cop who played by the rules his whole career goes,
all right, I'm taking my badge off, too, for this one time.
And, you think about those films we grew up on, is the cop movies, lawyer TV shows, the hospital shows. You would think that the only jobs in America are cops, lawyers, and some gig at the hospital.
He called them suckers and losers. Who in the hell does he think he is? Who does he think he is?
Who does he think he is, Sean Gregorian? Who does that guy think he is?
Well,
who does Sean think he is?
maybe he was muted.
Oh, man. It's best to say he was muted. We have Lena Star Moon, who might know what the deal is. She said, that's a deep thought, Sean. It's so deep, we can't even measure it. That's how deep it is. Oh, Maddie Lynn, who says, baby Sean, yes, Sean is a baby. He needs to be pampered. And how's that diaper rash? Late night thoughts. Okay. All right. We are officially late for Late Night Thoughts. Yes, we are here tonight. Good evening, everybody, to a Real Deal Media original podcast audio edition tonight. I am your Late Night Thoughts host, Dean Ryan, and what an unusual time to do a show. But I've had some unusual circumstances, which we'll hear about here tonight. Anyways, this is, if you are new, this is a audio podcast. Not always, but usually. Late Night Thoughts. Tonight, we're going to talk about everything and nothing at all, but accordingly, that is, tonight we do have some headlines to wrap our minds around, but also some lifestyle, human conditions to really speak about and hear about, as we're now officially in March, and the Ides to March is just nearby. Yes, it is. Tonight we are broadcasting live, I believe, right? Live on Rumble, as well as YouTube. Yes, we are, and I think we should be fine on there. Anyways, welcome everybody to a late start here. It's been a late week to start for some of us, me being one of them. Yes, no doubt about that. I'll tell you what happened here. Well, as the Ides of March is nearby, many things have now come into place. I should start the show by saying Happy Purim for all of you celebrating the Purity Festival happening in the Judea religion. Usually it means purifying yourself, your water. In this case, purifying your neighbors too. In the means and through the means of war. It's what I'm learning, at least. But a lot of people would differ from that. We're going to peer into that here tonight. What is Purim? Tonight it's supposed to be March 3rd, or it was March 3rd, 3:33 a.m. 333. If you follow that, there's a number that follows me quite often. If you follow gematria or numerology, we know the elites do. It's a language they speak in a lot of different languages. That's what I've been trying to learn lately. But we're hearing a lot of things now as war is spiraling. A lot of people, myself included, they kind of tune out. When the world gets really crazy, people tune out because they can't make sense of it. It's all happening at once. We're told that it's a 7-war front, no matter which way you turn. And that's a lot for people. And some people tune out. For me, what happened was roughly 2 days ago, I said I have to tune out. And I was given a THC gummy. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that has kicked my behind. It's not stuff I do usually, but I tried it, and I have I've been in Alice in Wonderland and back, and I'm not even sure what day it is. That's how potent these things are, and I'm not sure I was meant to handle that. Maybe it's my native blood, where usually they can't handle alcohol. In this case, although it's a candy, it definitely made my days turn into weeks. That's for sure. But I think it's an example of what people are trying to do to make some sense of what's happening in a very senseless world. Is the term of escapism is truly up in the dialect of people. Some people can get lost in a book. Some people can go on a hike. In my sense, in my case, I got lost in a flurry of THC madness, which is the first time for me in quite some time. And so sorry for those all around me who are trying to get a hold of me. I am still trying to make sense of it. Just to give you another example, I've been having the wildest dreams too lately. Wildest dreams. Woke up in a cold sweat the other day. I was literally dead center in a, what you would call the, it was like a music video, to be exact. And it was the Michael Jackson one, Thriller. I was right in the middle of that. So I've been having some wild dreams. Just, but that's what happens right now in this time of war. But here's some of the things that are leading us to the edge and the brink of insanity. Speaking of that, the wars are now spiraling. They're saying spiraling out of control. The war, which was a war of choice, it's a war of aggression. It's a very unpopular one. And even to the point now where Spain, alongside Cuba, could be in the chopping block. Oh, yeah. Let me tell you more about this. Well, now the explosions sound in the Iranian capital start to go boom as the war with the United States and Israel enters its 5th day. Now, remember, too, 3 to 4 weeks at most. Experts have said that the U.S. and their lack of munitions will last. Well, now the Dubai, United Arab Emirates explosions sounded in Iran's capital city as well. Wednesday, as the war with the U.S. and Israel entered the 5th day following earlier strikes on the Iranian nuclear site, retaliatory strikes by the Islamic Republic across the Gulf region, something we haven't seen in quite some time. The Iranian state television reported explosions around Tehran as dawn broke. Meanwhile, Israel said its air defenses were activated due to the incoming missile fire from Iran, which they can't last. Their Iron Dome is breaking, that entire dome itself. 5 days into the war with the U.S., President Donald Trump suggested it would last several weeks or longer. Nearly 800 people have been killed in Iran, including some Trump said he had considered as possible future leaders of the country. So much for the one and done crowd. Well, 5 days into the war, including that, explosions over there in Lebanon have been also being heard during this time, where Israel said it's retaliating against Hezbollah militants. Now, Lebanon's state-run media reported that at least 4 people were killed in an Israeli strike that hit a residential complex in the city of Baalbek. Interesting. A day earlier, Israel launched airstrikes against Iranian missile launchers and a nuclear research site, and Iran struck back against Israel and others, targeting U.S. embassies, disrupting energy supplies and travel. Well, this is the greater war. Now, the American embassy over there in Saudi Arabia and the U.S. consulate over there in the UAE came under drone attacks themselves. Iran has fired dozens of ballistic missiles in Israel. Through most of the incoming fire has been intercepted. Luckily for them. Now, 11 people in Israel have been killed since the conflict began. Now, in other developments, the Pentagon identified the U.S. Army Reserve soldiers who were killed in the drone strike Sunday at a command center in Kuwait. The strike also killed 2 other service members. There you go. So the U.S. has lost some men already. Now, the spiraling nature of the war raised questions about when and how it would end, which I think the answer will be it's going to be a long time. This is now a war of choice. The Trump administration has offered a variety of different answers, but really various objectives, including destroying Iran's missile capabilities, wiping out its navy, preventing it from obtaining nuclear weapons, and ensuring it cannot continue to support armed allied groups. While initial U.S. strikes killed Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and Trump urged Iranians to overthrow their government, senior administrative officials have since said regime change was not the goal. Well, what the hell is the goal now? The goalpost keeps moving. We often wonder. Now, Trump today, just earlier today, seemed to downplay the chances of the war ending Iran's theocratic rule, saying that, quote, someone within the Iranian regime might be the best choice to take power once the U.S.-Israel campaign is finished. Well, what the hell does that mean? So it was about regime change, where they even propped up the Shah's son, who came out of the Zionist coffins of, irrelevance. Now it's about, well, since we can't really change the entire regime, maybe someone else in ranks is best. See how the goalpost moves. And that should tell you right there that the strategy of this entire conflict, which is being done as wag the dog, that should tell you that the strategy is to find a strategy to get out. Because let me tell you, this administration and the people behind this, they're going to have egg on their face, if not already, because there is no strategy. There is no long-term plan, because they don't have one, and they'll stay long-term to save face. But come the midterms, these people are all going to be up for war crimes. This is bad. There's a clause that they said, well, Obama used in his fights with Syria, and that, well, people are not having that. That's not going to be an excuse that's going to save this administration by any means. This is a betrayal on so many levels. So many levels. So yeah, and you listen to all the spokespersons in the military on the U.S. side. They'll say it was a terrible idea, bad, and that versus the Israeli military intelligence, who everything's good. These people in Israel, they're jumping ship already to India as their new host they can suck off of. Yeah. So yeah, we lost 3 service members. U.S. Embassy over there in Saudi Arabia, all these different places, they're all under attack. That's it. Hundreds have died, including children. U.S. Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 787 people in Iran, according to the Red Crescent Society. In Lebanon, where Israel launched retaliatory strikes against the Iranian supported people, they killed 50. So we've killed, in our name, roughly 1,000 people right now in Iran and Lebanon. Civilians have died because of this stupid war we started. And I shouldn't say we. This is not our government. This is a government that has taken over the United States through Israel, and they have captured the United States federal government via blackmail and via all kinds of heinous things, which I heard the next drop in the Epstein files is probably going to be by far the worst. We're not even sure what that's going to entail, but this is terrible. So the civilian lives have been lost, and there's no humility. There's just well, throw your government over and replace it with what? Yeah, this is so stupid, and if this happened to us, you would never hear the end of it. Very silly. So that's how that one goes there. I mean, you could go on and on and on, but I'm telling you, the consequences of this entire action that didn't need to happen far outweigh what the goals are, because there is no goal. The goal is to keep Israel happy, keep the psychotic psychopaths who run the country, keep them from dropping the nuclear bomb using the Samson option. That's about it. That's all they have. Outside of that, they couldn't tell you. Jump how high? Now, they're trying to also use they're seeking an armed uprising, whatever that means. They think those handle it. And then at the same time, you have now troops dying that we said, well, just before this all started about a week ago, everybody said, well, it's a one and done, Dean, just like Venezuela. Now it's not. Now you have troops dying, and they're mortified. The more troops die in this war, how are they going to explain that to the American people? How do you justify federal tax income at this point? This doesn't represent me, you. This doesn't keep any of us safe. Then you have Britain scrambling to get involved. You have that guy who's trying to just remain relevant. Unbelievable. Hundreds are dying. It's disgusting. Well, you might have heard, who heard about the Bill Clinton deposition the other day? Some of the leaks have come out. I, for one, loved them, where he's looking back at some of the photos coming out just with glee. And, I remember that time. Oh, she rubbed my back. Yes, she did. Hillary couldn't rub my back because she got claws on. Yeah, that is something to see. You also have, this is really exciting too. Hillary, her little squeamish tirades are now coming out. Well, if we are talking about Purim, and what is this going to do? It means more attacks. And we have now more polls coming out about this war. As now, this is not looking good for anybody who's involved. So now in Texas, which they're speaking of politics now, in Texas, they're trying to turn Texas what they call purple. Texas has always been primarily, as I learn English all over again, because my dyslexia, it's turning now Democrat. Yeah, that's a big deal. That's a big game changer. And what that means are people like Dan Crenshaw, the man with the patched eye, the man who has fantasies of killing Tucker Carlson. Yeah, you know him. And then we'll come back to the Clintons there. But he's now even down in the polls. Can you believe that? Well, just for starters, Donald Trump is now, his poll numbers have come out amongst all Americans. They don't seem to be going up, but they don't seem to be necessarily staying leveled at middle. Yeah, they keep going down. Well, now here's a new poll that's coming out before we get to the losing candidates. Well, about 408 days into Donald Trump's second term, I guess you could say, well, the president's net approval rating is down 19 points. And 0.6 points, 0.6 points since last week, and a 38% approval rating, with 58% who are disapproving and 4% who are not sure. How can you not be sure at this point? But nearly 60%, over half of the country, disapprove of Donald Trump. That's right. Since Donald Trump's State of the Union, his speech just about a week ago, he boasted that America had made, quote, a turnaround for the ages. President's net approval ratings, which fell this week, another 19 points, suggest that Americans are not persuaded. I would say so. The polling was conducted mostly after Trump's administration had launched an aerial assault with Israel on Iran. Early surveys suggest the war is unpopular. According to economist, that is, YouGov poll conducted a week before the airstrikes, just 27% of Americans favored an attack, but the president's handlings of domestic policy is dragging him down. Americans are especially unhappy about the way Trump administration has carried out its crackdown on immigration. Democrats are blocking funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which is responsible for immigration enforcement. The government has been partially shut down since February 4th. A lot of people seem to be not happy about that. Well, Americans seem to be also worried about prices. Though Mr. Trump's net approval rating on the issue has risen, just a tad in October to 24%, although that's still negative. That might change when tax cuts get approved by the president, taking effect, and what they're now calling a jumbo-sized refund check that starts arriving in your postbox after tax filing season ends in April. They're thinking that might be a little bump that he just might need for his approval to increase. However, the majority of Americans speak. They are not at all in favor of this war with Iran. It will tank him. Yep, it will definitely take him. Peace is war. You know, it's amazing how people fall for that. How they didn't listen to the cries of 1984. They tried to warn us. I'll tell you that much. Here's something else happening here. It's not just the president who seems to be unpopular. It's anyone connected and tied to the GOP. Yeah, that's right. Like we were saying, Dan Crenshaw, who's a senator over there in Texas, a representative rather. Well, his job is up for grabs too, as he's not only unpopular in the Democrat circles, but even people in the GOP hate him just as much. Well, what is that going to do? What is that going to do to the GOP majority in Texas? Well, it's turning it purple in places like El Paso, which is now people like Beto O'Rourke, who made that a communist stronghold. That's now up for grabs as well. Here's what I'm talking about. Well, Texas House District 2 primary results, as now the primaries are starting to come out in the small little elections in the build up to the midterms. Well, it looks like Democrats are winning. The incumbent over there is beating Dan Crenshaw 57-39. Even Democrats in smaller districts seem to be winning. This is the result and consequence of this war. Yeah, there you have it. The little House counties. So it's going to be a big change when and if Texas goes the way of the Democrat explosion happening down there. But why is this war of choice? Well, here is what I'm talking about. Now U.S. commanders are starting to come out, and they're telling troops Trump has been anointed by Jesus to start the Iranian war, sparking hundreds of complaints now. Well, a non-profit U.S. military watchdog said it has received hundreds of complaints about commanders within the military providing religious reasons for starting the Iran war. Well, how do you like that? I told you, the Mormons have a stronghold on the military and the Christian Zionists. Here we go. Perfect example. Well, now a damning new report found that the evangelical Christian fundamentalism is underpinning U.S. military action in Iran, giving it credence. That's right. Donald Trump has announced Saturday that the U.S. and Israel launched a joint operation, struck Iran overnight, killing many. And the war has now put a bad taste in people's mouths, except for some of the commanders in the military itself. Well, this is what's happening. As it's now called peace throughout the Middle East, and indeed the world, we're calling regime change in the Islamic Republic a necessary thing. Well, the operation comes less than a year after Trump ordered strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities June of last year, if you recall, of 25, during a 12-day war between Iran and Israel broke out, during which the president claimed to have obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities. It comes after a chilling map emerged revealing 12 safest places to find refuge if World War III erupts. Well, details about that have also came into the New York Times as recently that Trump and his commanders ordered U.S. troops to continue attacking Iran for 4 to 5 weeks without providing details of the plan. That's what's being said right now. However, a fresh report found that hundreds of U.S. troops across dozens of units and installations have submitted complaints to their nonprofit watchdog, Military Religious Freedom Foundation, since the attack about combat unit commanders providing Christian reasoning for the war, during which at least U.S. troops, in this case 4 of them, have already been killed. That's not good enough for some. Well, the officers who attended a briefing Monday told them that the combat unit's commander urged us to tell us that the troops we're fighting were all part of God's divine plan. He specifically referenced the numerous citations out of the book of Revelations referring to Armageddon and the imminent return of Jesus Christ as why we are, quote, fighting the Iranian Guard. The commander also urged that Trump was, quote, anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to earth, and that the Iran war is part of God's plan, the commander in the U.S. military said. Wow, the remarks were submitted in more than 110 complaints about commanders across all military branches, including more than 40 units across 30 military installations. At least one of the complaints identified themselves as a Christian who could be deployed at any time in Iran, writing on behalf of 15 troops. This is disturbing. So the justifications for this entire thing is all religious. How do you like that? How do you like that? Never heard of such dastardly things before. Yeah, if I was in the military right now, you wouldn't see me stick around for any of this. That's for sure. Oh, God. Well, here's some other things happening. We talked about, well, the fight is going on. Well, how exactly did they find the Ayatollah Khamenei, who was, as they said, very well insulated underneath the ground, bunkers? How was he found? Well, it's now coming out exactly how they continue to find him. Well, this is coming out of the Sun. Well, Israel, of course, hacked Iran's traffic cams for years. Yes, they did. That's how they found him. For years. Israel hacked Iran's traffic cams for years, so Mossad knew Tehran like we knew Jerusalem before the Ayatollah was assassinated. Well, hacked nearly every traffic camera. The Mossad of Israel had done so over there in the Tehran region for at least a handful of years, allowing Mossad to stalk the Ayatollah and strike with deadly precision. Spies watched Ali Khamenei and his inner circle so closely that one official boasted, quote, "We knew Tehran like we knew Jerusalem." That's right. Well, the extraordinary cyber operation meant Israeli intelligence had eyes on the tyrant's compound on Pasteur Street long before jets roared in to finish the job. According to the Financial Times, almost all of the Iranian capital's traffic cameras were secretly taped. Footage was encrypted and beamed back into the servers of Tel Aviv, over there in southern Israel. Agents tracked the movements of Khamenei's bodyguards, logging their home addresses, shifts, routes, and even where they packed and parked the night prior for their personal cars. One strategically placed camera facing the Supreme Leader's compound proved gold dust, as it showed exactly where guards left their vehicles when reporting for duty. It built what spies call, quote, a pattern of life, a forensic picture who's protected the 86-year-old despot and provided the precisions of where, when, and exactly how. Now, as an Israeli intelligence official told the newspaper, quote, we knew Tehran like we knew Jerusalem. No big whoop. Continue by saying, and when you know a place as well as you know the street you grew up on, you notice a single thing that's at a place. When the moment came on Saturday morning, Israeli didn't just rely on cameras. Around about a dozen mobile phone towers near the Pasteur Street were disrupted, making phones appear busy and blocking last-ditch warnings to Khamenei's security detail. At least two Israeli intelligence officers independently confirmed this, that the meeting he had been holding was going ahead on schedule. And then the next thing, he was eliminated. That's how intricate the Israeli Mossad is. Do you see? They figured out how to infiltrate the very things in every fabric of life. So how does the American president, anyone for that fact, get out of the Israeli stranglehold that's infiltrated our intelligence services, our departments, our federal government? How does that work? Now we have Iran's revenge, U.S. bases in the Middle East under attack everywhere because of this. What a hornet's nest. Then we got word that Germany, France, others are now going to be part of a coalition going after Iran. And why do you think that is? Who do we think helped install people like Steer Karmer? How do we think Zelensky got there? Who's some of the power brokers with Macron and their connection to the Mossad? So Israel has the dirt on a lot of the EU leaders, so they're going to be blackmailing a lot of these people into the war as well. That's what that tells me. You know, Germany was a big pinpoint for the Israeli weapons exchange coming from the U.S. They didn't have to make a pivot stop in Germany before it goes to Israel. So Germany's a big part of this ethnic cleansing. Just unbelievable how this is going. In our name, too. In our name. That's the worst part about it all. Well, here's one more story before we have a hard break coming up. Well, as we kind of gear back into the political ramifications of this, a lot of this came too during the week of the deposition and all the leaks that happened from the Clintons' testimonies. Distraction and wag the dog is one term to describe it. Others say it's one big carousel of war. Especially when you cross Hillary Clinton, that is. Well, now Hillary Clinton may have lost. She may have lost it on recent MAGA lawmakers Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert, as the former First Lady's Epstein deposition went off the rails. Yes, it did. Highly embarrassing, highly appropriate. Well, Clinton's deposition before the House Oversight Committee just this past Thursday. Well, it was released on YouTube. You might have seen it by the GOP Oversight Committee. The upload revealed the moment Hillary Clinton, who's 78 years old now, stormed out of a meeting when it was revealed that Boebert, the U.S. representative of Colorado's 4th district, congressional district that is, had leaked a photo of Clinton testifying to a MAGA influencer. Well, the former Secretary of State said, quote, "I'm done with this. You can hold me in contempt of court from now until the cows come home." Which then we said, well, we thought the cow did come home because you were here with us tonight on the stand. Well, the deposition was heated even before the photo was leaked. The first flashpoint came when the Mace asked how Clinton knew President Donald Trump's Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. But Clinton tried to answer. Mace repeatedly interrupted. She had been trying to explain that she knew Lutnick for her time as senator representing New York from 2001 to 2009, when the law firm he ran, Cantor Fitzgerald, was decimated by the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Here's a quote. "You asked the question. I'm going to answer your question," Clinton said as her eyes were widening. Continuing, "Now you're going to tell me this? Now you're going to yell at me?" Mace responded. So it was quite the catfight. Well, also, "This is where I spent my time doing," Clinton barked, leaning and leaning across the table and pointing at Mace. Beating the table, she added, quote, "I was taking care of the people who lost 3,000 lives at the World Trade Center." Now, Clinton secured over $20 billion in federal aid for rescue, recovery, and cleanup of Ground Zero as part of the 9/11 response, and was a key advocate for health needs of the first responders. Now, what also ensued after this was a crosstalk bonanza, they're now describing it, with Mace trying to needle Clinton over apparently non-existent emails between her and Jeffrey Epstein. Here's a quote. "If you have an email with me asking Jeffrey Epstein for money," Clinton challenged Mace, "then prove it, show it." Mace alleged that Clinton had tried to secure funding from Epstein for an intimate event at Cantor Fitzgerald. The former Secretary of State denied this repeatedly. South Carolina congressman admitted she did not have any such emails and tried to yield her questioning. Quote, "No, I'm going to finish answering the question, which I have the right to do," Clinton said. She explained that she knew Lutnick through her work over there for the 9/11 charities. "We worked together to rebuild Manhattan." So they're feeling the pinch. I mean, even the MAGA influencer lawyers are having to use Mr. Lutnick as a point of reference, who's still on the Trump administration. And very gleefully he is, skipping down the hallways. So that is not going to look good. Here's something else before we go to break that just came my way that's not looking good at all. As now Kristi Noem and her alleged affair is coming up into questioning. And she's on the chopping block as well. In the same stroke, now the Ice Barbie cornered on relationship with alleged lover. Kristi Noem just earlier today had to explain to Congress the role of her advisor, Corey Lewandowski. Yeah, he is Loser-andowski's right. Whose alleged relationship with the Homeland Security has been called, quote, "the worst kept secret in D.C., and a very salacious one." Well, Noem, who's 54 years old, who was asked by Democrats of the Senate Judiciary Committee about her former associates of hers allegedly being awarded government contracts for deportation ad campaign featuring her when Lewandowski came up. Well, this is very interesting. What is his role? People like Blumenthal over there asked. Well, Kristi responded, his role is a special government employee. Special government employees work with White House and administration. So there it is. It's coming to light now. Oh, wow. Out of all the people, she picked that guy. So she's on her way out, and what a fiasco that is. All right. We're going to take this quick break here. You're listening to a very, very, very audio edition of tonight's deep late night thoughts. We'll be back after this break. We have a few more stories and a few more late night thoughts to share. Don't go anywhere.
You like me, you want to get to heaven, but you certainly don't want to take your time, let alone wait in line. That's why I here at Tunnels to Heaven, we're going to get you to your final destination before the revelation, tribulation, and the strangulation. All you got to do is start giving, because forgiveness ain't cheap, it ain't free, and you got to give to forgive. So that's why sign up today. You can find it at a variety of locations, and underneath the synagogues, we got one in Brooklyn, we got one in Alabama, and we got one over there in Seattle, Washington. Get your fix before you get your kicks, and don't fall for any of these tricks. Get your Tunnels to Heaven membership today, because God's waiting, but he ain't gonna pick you up. Hold on, what's that?
I'll see myself. I should have done. What are you saying?
Oh, it's my turn to go in that tunnel. I'll see you guys later. And I'll see you in heaven.
Order your tunnels to heaven today. 1-800-TUNNELS. 1-800-TUNNELS.
Late night update news brief right here on Real Deal Media. We are back. Almost. Almost. Okay. Thank you very much. That's our wonderful, wonderful house band, the Night Owls. You can become a Night Owl by going to realdealmedia.tv. That's realdealmedia.tv. Join the cause, join the membership tonight. Become a Night Owl, visit realdealmedia.tv. And we thank everybody who has helped donate to bring back World at War. As you can see here, the #1 late night show is due to return very soon, actually, as we are in a world at war. Kind of right now, you're kind of seeing the unplugged version of what the shows are. It's kind of a special occasion. We do that here on a special night. Yes. Welcome back, everyone. I'm still Dean Ryan. Welcome to Late Night Thoughts, an original podcast series by Real Deal Media. Yes. It is now the bottom half of the show. Well, as you heard, the religious holiday Purim is here. It is upon us. What is Purim? Well, I don't know exactly, but I can tell how they're celebrating it. We have a lot of underground party scenes popping up all over the place. Israelis are celebrating Purim in air raid shelters. Yeah, that's happening all over Tel Aviv as we speak. Yeah, so I don't know exactly how they're celebrating it, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know even what Burning Man is. Here's a question, though. Will this war, because I remember people telling me there was not going to be a war before the midterms, and that didn't seem to happen. Is this the war of all wars to sink the presidency, to sink the GOP? And do you think it would have mattered had Kamala Harris been in the equation now? Would we still be at this kind of precedent that we find ourselves in? There's a question for you all. We have people who are commenting all over the place. There we go. We have Ranger Buck who says it never rains in California. It never does, but when it does, you know. We have a lot of storms off and on that are coming everywhere. And then Ranger Buck claims the following. About 95% of news is smoke and mirrors. There's a little bit of truth out there every now and then. That's so true. That's so true. Yes, that is. Okay. Well, what we have to expect here is I'm going to leave you on a high note here. A lot of people are saying, well, you know what? We took our power back with doctors. We now decide what is best for us, not a bureaucrat. A lot of people are taking their power back into their own hands with health, but also with where they get their news, with where they put their energy and efforts in, and also not waiting for a savior as well. Shadow governments come and go, but some of them remain forever. In this case, this is another example of war that's going to suck us into the Middle East and keep us there for quite some time until we lose how many members? How many personnel? As now the war in Iran is increasing, so much so one bombers target ballistic missile systems with the B-1 bombers now. Because of this, we also have the Middle East conflict now triggering worst global travel chaos since COVID, stranding hundreds of thousands of Americans and more across the world. How will this be? How will this save us in the end? Also, now we have Trump refuses to rule out troops in Iran as Operation Epic Fury is now expanding. How is that going to put the United States in a good light? How is it going to help us here at home domestically? No, we're being rotor-rooted into the Middle East as long as Israel will have us. So now we have lost 6 U.S. troops killed, 18 wounded as the Iranian strikes hit American operation centers. It will never end. Now, on top of all this, the U.S. intelligence is now warning new Chinese submarines have now emerged that can target Americans from coastal waters. How do you like that? How do you like that? Now that China's going to get in the picture. I'll tell you about that. Also, in our second half here, we now have fermented ways to outlast the Holocaust of survival. People are learning fermented ways for their health. I'm going to tell you about that. But let's start with this here. As we have some critical issues now because of the war. Now we have the United States facing critical shortage of air defense munitions as Iran pounds regional bases. As the president was warned, very black-melt president now. Well, the United States is now confronting a critical depletion of its air and missile defense interceptors, stockpiles, as it enters the third day of sustained conflict now with Iran. That's right, the Pentagon is rapidly expending munitions in both offensive strikes against Iranian targets and defensive operations to protect U.S. forces and regional allies from retaliatory salvos, according to officials and analysts who are familiar with the ammunition. Well, the strain on limited inventories compounded by years of transfers to Ukraine and Israel. The munition shortage is a long time coming, and it shows a vulnerability of the United States military never seen before. The conflict, now dubbed Operation Epic Fury by U.S. Central Command, began the 28th of February with U.S. massive joint U.S.-Israeli air campaigning targeting hundreds of Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps sites across Iran. Now, the Iranian forces responded swiftly with waves of ballistic missiles, drones, and cruise missiles directed at U.S. bases throughout the Gulf region. The high volume of incoming fire is testing the capacity and the sustainability of U.S. defensive systems like the Patriot and Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. Now, the public statements from U.S. officials have highlighted a stark disparity between U.S. production capabilities and the threat volume. According to many analyses, the United States possesses a limited industrial capacity to produce high-end interceptor missiles. This constraint is now colliding with an adversary capable of producing over 100 ballistic missiles per month, according to regional security assessments. So, the Iranian retaliatory strikes have now targeted U.S. installations, allied nations across the Middle East, reportedly targeting U.S. embassy compounds in Saudi Arabia. The Kingdom of Bahrain's defense ministry confirmed its forces intercepted 70 ballistic missiles and 59 drones launched from Iran. Similarly, the United Arab Emirates Ministry of Defense stated its air defense faced nearly 200 ballistic missiles and hundreds of drones, with several nonetheless hitting civilian targets. Now, these Gulf states rely almost entirely on U.S.-supplied Patriot systems from high-tier air defense capabilities. The U.S. has approximately 25% of the global interceptor inventories around the region. So basically, a lot of these Arab nations that are friendly with Israel, they all rely on the protection of the U.S. missile air defense systems, which is now depleting, meaning the entire region is all up for grabs now. They're not going to last. What Iran is doing is shooting all of their they've used all their low-end missiles on them, which the area that is provided security by the U.S. cannot afford to keep up much longer. And we're only, day 4, day 3, day 5 here? How telling is that? Now, the strain extends beyond defense systems, they're saying. Now, reports indicate supplies of offensive munitions, including Tomahawk cruise missiles and Standard missiles, interceptors used for ballistic purposes, are also dwindling as the U.S. prepares and executes further strikes. Now, a report recently by the War Zone noted that the U.S. military has employed long-range kamikaze drones based on the Iranian Shahed 136 design for the first time, is now being used in combat operations, indicating a diversification of strike options potentially due to constraints of traditional munitions. So they're having to use exotic operations on Iran because they're running out of the normal stuff. So they got to say, quick, break the glass. Let's use the reserves that we hope work. So we're in for a world of hurt. And talk about when we have to leave the region because we have no choice, because we can't even keep up. We're going to leave with an embarrassing black eye on us. That's how bad this is. That's how bad this is. Very telling. Very telling. Oh, all because of this country. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, I'm going to... And now we have gold climbing up to about $5,250 an ounce as Middle East tensions fuel safe haven demands. Isn't that something? Well, I'm going to leave you with this here. You know, a lot of people are learning old wives' tale, or I should say traditions from their grandparents that they're now incorporating during the new Great Depression we find ourselves entering. And a lot of those old practices, whether it's learning how to freeze dry your food, how to make preserves, you know, you salt your meat, it turns into, I don't want to say the word anymore, but the something, you know, if you have beef, it turns into something that you could preserve it with. In light of the Epstein files, I refuse to say that word now. See how they've changed it? Well, now they're saying, this is coming out of Natural News, it says fermented cabbage outperforms probiotic pills in a new gut health study. Now, let me tell you, this is some of the most important stuff to hear, because now we're hearing, we had Bobby that just said that schizophrenia can be cured by keto diets. You might have heard the rumors of people with bipolar disorders. A lot of that's gut oriented. It can be cured by what's in your gut. Cancers, you know, our moods and whatever moods we're in, a lot of it is connected and tied to our guts. There's no doubt about it. And some of the healthiest things you can ever eat, well, they say kimchi, which the Koreans, you know, live by, is some of the most potent wonder drugs you can have. The Germans know it as sauerkraut, which I prefer sauerkraut if I had a choice. But now, here's something to do when we start learning how to start preserving things for a time when there's not going to be any food in the groceries at the rate we're going. It's going to be based on your social crediting scores. The meat industry is pretty nasty. You know, me personally, I gave up pork. I won't eat pork products anymore. I don't want to have anything to do with the torture of what's happening to these animals they're growing in labs. I don't want any part of it. Well, now the best thing you can do is ferment cabbage, as it outperforms probiotic pills. And it's something to look into, is now fermented cabbage outperforms that. It outperforms raw cabbage and probiotic supplements, reducing intestinal barrier damage by 40% due to its unique blend of lactic acid and indole-3 lactate compounds that mimic a healthy gut microbiome. Now, the modern diets destroy gut health through processed foods, glyphosate, antibiotics, and artificial additives, while fermented foods like sauerkraut provide natural, cost-effective solutions with prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. Now, commercial probiotics often fail because they lack diversity. They skip the postbiotics and may not survive digestion, whereas fermented cabbage delivers live cultures, prebiotic fibers, and anti-inflammatory postbiotics. Now, fermented cabbage also supports mental health through the gut-brain axis, helping to reduce anxiety and depression. aligning with historical reports of lower mental health issues in cultures consuming fermented foods. That goes into what Bobby was talking about. Now, traditional fermentation methods surpass lab-engineered supplements, offering a holistic, affordable, and proven way to combat leaky guts, autoimmune disorders, and metabolic diseases, reinforcing the wisdom of ancestral diets. So this is truly, these are things, we talk about in times of war, things that we need to learn about. Well, this is it. If we're going to outlast the extermination worldwide on humans, it's these small things. We have to have a healthy mind for a healthy body to fight a very unhealthy world. In an era where gut health is increasingly linked to chronic diseases, autoimmune disorders, and mental well-beings, this new study confirms what traditional cultures have known for centuries. So fermented cabbage is the way to go. I'm all about that. In fact, I love sauerkraut. Sauerkraut, rice, a nice sauce goes a long way. So I think that's, I'm in the mood for that. Well, on that note, well, hopefully you learned something here tonight, Late Night Thoughts, that be careful with THC gummies. Learn how to ferment and learn how to be, if you're a conservative out there, conservative is also not going to war, conserving what's good, but also preserving and conserving God's natural fruits and foods that are all around us, as the gut health truly is connected to the mental. Well, we're going to leave it there. I will be back in a more traditional role tomorrow night with Late Night Update, as we will have a guest of sorts. We'll be doing musical chairs in that front. So until then, for all of us here at Late Night Thoughts, I'm Dean Ryan saying thank you for sharing a bit of your late night and all of your late night thoughts with me. Till next time, always remember to stay tuned and stay awake. Good night, everybody.